Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of organic chemistry.
Sounds exciting.
You want to understand how carbon is like the backbone of all life?
Yeah, the basis of those incredible molecules that make life possible.
So we're using this fascinating chapter from a biology textbook to guide us.
Right.
But before we get into the details, can you give us that big picture view?
Sure.
What's so special about carbon?
Well, carbon's kind of got this secret weapon.
Okay.
Can form 4 bonds.
4.
Yeah, and that lets it build these really diverse and complex structures.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, imagine if you were building with Legos,
Okay.
but they had 4 connection points instead of just 2.
Right,
You could
right.
create so many more elaborate structures.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so
That's-
more connections means more complexity.
Right.
But how did scientists first figure out that simple chemicals could become the building blocks of life?
That's where this really clever experiment comes in.
Okay.
Done by Stanley Miller.
Stanley Miller.
Back in 1953.
Mm.
He basically recreated what they thought the conditions were like on early Earth.
He did this in a lab.
Yeah, in his lab.
Whoa, wait, he built a mini Earth.
You can think of it like
What
that.
did that even look like?
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
You got this sealed flask. And it's filled with a mix of gases like methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor,
Okay.
kind of like simulating the early atmosphere.
Interesting.
And then he added sparks to simulate lightning.
Really?
Yeah, and get this, he actually made amino acids.
He made amino acids.
Yeah, those essential parts of proteins.
So he like sparked life into existence in a bottle.
Well, not quite life itself,
Okay.
but the basic ingredients.
Mm.
It was pretty groundbreaking proof that the building blocks of life could come from just simple chemicals,
Wow.
if you have the right conditions.
So from volcanic gases and a little zap, you get the potential for life.
You got it.
That's amazing. So I'm starting to see how carbon's versatility comes into play here.
Right.
Like, think about those amino acids that Miller created.
Yep.
Those are just one example of all the different molecules built on that carbon framework.
Exactly.
What do we call that framework again?
The carbon skeleton.
Okay, the carbon skeleton.
And it's like the backbone of these
What
molecules.
does that look like?
It can be a lot of different things.
Mm.
Carbon atoms can be linked in chains. They can be in branched structures or even rings.
Wow.
So you get all these different shapes and sizes.
Okay.
And this variation, along with different elements that attach to the carbon skeleton,
Yeah.
that creates the huge diversity of organic molecules.
So it's like carbon's this ultimate molecular architect.
That's a great way to put it.
It's building everything from the fats in our bodies to the fuel we use in our cars.
Right. Like, for instance, hydrocarbons.
Right.
They're molecules made of just hydrogen and carbon, and they're found in both petroleum and fats.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
You know how oil and water don't mix?
Yeah,
That's because hydrocarbons are hydrophobic.
right. They don't like to interact with water.
Ah, so that's why my salad dressing always separates.
Exactly.
But wait, if hydrocarbons are in both fats and fossil fuels,
Yeah.
does that mean we're made of the same stuff we put in our cars?
Well, not exactly the same,
Okay.
but the basic idea is similar.
Hmm.
It goes back to carbon and how incredibly versatile it is
Yeah.
and how it can form these long chains of molecules.
That's pretty wild. It's like carbon is this universal language that talks to both the living and non-living world.
I like that.
But how do we get so much diversity from just carbon chains?
Right.
They seem kind of simple.
Well, the diversity comes not just from the chains themselves,
Okay.
but how they're arranged and what other atoms are attached to them.
Mhm.
Even a tiny change in the types or arrangement of atoms
Yeah.
can make a totally different molecule with unique properties.
So it's not just about the carbon skeleton.
Right.
It's about the whole package.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Let's talk about isomers for a second.
Okay.
You can have 2 molecules with the exact same chemical formula, but different structures. And those differences can have a huge impact.
Really?
It's like if you rearrange the furniture in a room,
Okay.
you still have the same pieces, but it looks and feels totally different.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Isomers.
Yeah.
Molecules with the same ingredients but different layouts.
Right.
Tell me more about these molecular makeovers.
Okay, so there are 3 main types of isomers.
3.
Yeah. First, we've got structural isomers,
Structural isomers.
where the atoms are connected in different orders,
Right, but
like having the same Lego bricks,
Yeah.
but building different things.
Gotcha. So it's all about how those atoms link up.
Exactly.
What are the other types?
Then there are cis-trans isomers.
Cis-trans isomers.
Okay, so think of a carbon double bond as like a stiff hinge.
Okay, a hinge.
In cis isomers, certain groups of atoms are on the same side of the bond,
Okay.
but in trans isomers, they're on opposite sides.
Oh, so it's like flipped.
Yeah, and this little difference can really change the molecule's properties.
Wow. So it's like flipping a switch on that double bond changes the molecule's whole personality.
I like that.
That's a good way to think about it. What's the last type?
The third type is enantiomers.
Enantiomers.
They're mirror images of each other.
Oh, wow.
Like your left and right hand,
Okay.
same atoms connected in the same order,
Yeah.
but flipped.
Mirror image molecules.
Yeah.
That seems like such a tiny difference.
It is.
Does it really matter?
Oh, it absolutely can.
Okay.
Especially in biology.
Hmm.
Think of a key fitting into a lock.
Right.
Only one shape will work.
Yeah.
And one really powerful example of this is the drug thalidomide.
Thalidomide.
One enantiomer was good for morning sickness,
Oh, wow.
but the other one caused birth defects.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was tragic, and it showed how important it is to understand enantiomers in medicine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. So even the tiniest change in a molecule's 3D structure can have huge consequences.
Totally.
It's amazing how much complexity we can get just from rearranging those carbon atoms.
It really is.
And we're still just talking about the basic framework.
Right.
To really get the diversity of organic molecules, we need to add another layer. Functional groups.
Functional groups, exactly.
What are those?
Think of them like accessories that give the molecule its function,
Okay.
like pockets on a jacket or buttons on a shirt.
Hmm.
They're specific groups of atoms that attach to the carbon skeleton,
Okay.
and each one gives its own special properties to the molecule.
So they're like molecular add-ons that give each molecule its own superpower.
You got it.
Okay. I'm ready to learn about these molecular power-ups.
Right.
What kind of functional groups are we talking about?
Well, there are 7 key ones
Damn.
that are super important to the chemistry of life.
Bring on the molecular accessories.
Okay, first up, we've got the hydroxyl group.
Hydroxyl group.
You'll find it in alcohols and sugars,
Okay.
and it's like a water magnet.
All
It
right.
makes the molecules soluble.
So hydroxyl groups are like the social butterflies of the molecular world. They help those molecules mix and mingle with water.
Exactly.
It's next.
Next, we have the carbonyl group.
Carbonyl group.
You'll find this one in sugars.
Okay.
It's important for energy and structure, and depending on where it is, it can make a sugar, an aldose, or a ketose.
Okay, so carbonyls are kind of like the architects
Yeah.
of sugar molecules.
Yeah.
They decide the shape and purpose.
Right.
What other functional fashion do we have?
Then there's the carboxyl group.
Carboxyl group.
It acts like an acid,
Okay.
meaning it can give away a hydrogen ion. You'll find it in amino acids and fatty acids.
So carboxyl groups are like the sourpusses of the molecular world. They add that acidic kick.
Right.
What about the amino group?
Well, the amino group is the opposite.
Okay.
It's a base, so it accepts hydrogen ions,
Interesting.
and it's also found in amino acids.
Oh.
So you can see how these two functional groups are really important for those building blocks of proteins.
So acids and bases, the yin and yang of chemistry, working together in harmony within amino acids.
Exactly.
That's so cool. What other functional groups are there?
Up next is the sulfhydryl group.
Sulfhydryl group.
This one's really important for holding the structure of proteins together.
Okay.
You know how they do those permanent treatments at the hair salon?
Yeah.
They actually break and reform sulfhydryl bonds to change your hair texture.
So even a trip to the salon involves some serious molecular rearranging.
That's right.
What else is on the list?
We've got the phosphate group.
Phosphate group.
This one's all about energy transfer,
Okay.
and it's found in ATP,
ATP.
the cell's energy currency.
Yeah, the stuff that keeps our cells running.
Right, and it's also found in DNA.
So are phosphate groups like tiny batteries attached to molecules?
That's a great way to put it.
That's a good analogy.
And last but not least, we have the methyl group.
Methyl group.
This one's not as reactive as the others,
Okay.
but it acts like an on-off switch for the molecule.
Interesting.
It can affect things like gene expression.
Wow. So methyl groups are like those tiny toggle switches that control how our genes work.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how all these functional groups come together to create this incredible molecular toolkit.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And you mentioned ATP earlier.
Right.
It's a perfect example of how these functional groups make a molecule what it is.
Definitely.
It's those phosphate bonds that hold the energy.
Right.
And when they break, boom, energy is released for the cell to use.
Exactly.
It's not just about building the molecules, it's about controlling how they interact and release energy.
You got it.
I never thought about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if ATP is constantly being used and broken down, how does the cell keep up with all that energy demand?
That's a great question.
Thanks.
The cell is really good at recycling. So once ATP releases its energy, It turns into ADP.
ADP.
It's like a dead battery.
Okay.
But the cell doesn't just throw it away.
What does it do?
It recharges it.
Really?
It takes energy from food or sunlight and uses it to attach another phosphate group, turning ADP back into ATP.
So it's ready to power more cellular processes.
Right.
It's like a never-ending energy cycle.
It really is.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much is happening at the molecular level that we just never even think about.
You know, it's mind-blowing.
You also mentioned that hydrocarbons are part of fats,
Yeah.
which are really important for storing energy in living things.
That's right.
We often think of hydrocarbons as being in fossil fuels,
Right.
but they're also key for life itself.
Exactly.
Those long hydrocarbon chains in fat molecules,
Yeah,
they're a great source of energy.
they are.
When we talk about burning fat for energy,
Yeah.
we're literally breaking down those hydrocarbons.
That's exactly what's happening.
Wow, so all those hours at the gym are really about breaking down carbon chains.
Pretty much.
That puts a whole new spin on things.
It does. And remember, it all comes back to carbon's amazing ability to form those four bonds,
Yeah.
creating this huge and complex web of molecules that make life possible.
I'm starting to see how everything is connected.
That's great.
But we've talked a lot about the building blocks.
Right.
How do they come together to create those bigger, more complex structures, like proteins and DNA?
Well, imagine a chain of beads,
Okay.
and each bead is an amino acid.
Okay.
That's basically what a protein is. A chain of amino acids all linked together.
Interesting.
And those links are called peptide bonds.
Okay, so amino acids are the building blocks.
Yeah.
Peptide bonds are the glue that holds them together.
Right.
But how does the cell know which amino acids to use and in what order to make a specific protein?
That's where DNA comes in. DNA is like the blueprint for life.
Okay,
It's got all the instructions for building and maintaining an organism.
that makes sense.
Think of DNA as a long, twisted ladder.
Okay, a ladder.
The rungs of the ladder are made up of these pairs of nitrogenous bases:
Okay.
adenine,
Adenine,
thymine,
thymine,
guanine,
and cytosine.
cytosine.
ATGC.
Right. A always pairs with T.
And G with C.
Exactly.
It's like a molecular alphabet.
That's a great way to think about it.
But how does this DNA code tell the cell how to build a protein? It seems like a big jump from letters on a ladder to a complex molecule.
It is a fascinating process.
What's it called?
It's called gene expression.
Gene expression.
A gene is a section of DNA that holds the code for making a specific protein.
So a gene is like a specific recipe in the DNA cookbook.
I like that analogy.
What happens next?
First, that DNA code gets transcribed into a molecule called messenger RNA,
Messenger RNA
or mRNA.
mRNA.
So the mRNA is like a copy of the recipe
Okay,
that can be taken out of the DNA library and brought to the kitchen.
gotcha.
Then the mRNA travels out of the nucleus,
The nucleus.
cell's control center,
Right.
and it goes into the cytoplasm.
Cytoplasm.
That's where protein synthesis happens.
So the cytoplasm is where the molecular chefs are,
Exactly.
ready to whip up some protein goodness.
That's right. In the cytoplasm, ribosomes,
Right.
which are like the protein-making machines of the cell,
Yep.
they read the mRNA code
Yeah.
and use it to assemble a chain of amino acids in the right order.
Wow, so DNA holds the master plan,
Right.
mRNA carries the instructions,
Yeah.
and ribosomes are the builders.
You got it.
It's like a perfectly coordinated molecular construction crew.
It really is an amazing process.
And this is happening all the time in every cell in our bodies.
Constantly
Wow.
building and maintaining all the proteins we need to survive.
It's mind-boggling. I'm
Yeah.
really starting to appreciate how complex and interconnected life is at the molecular level.
Me too.
But it seems like we're still just scratching the surface.
There's always more to learn.
What else is there to explore?
Well, we've talked about how proteins are built,
Right.
but there's more to the story.
Okay.
Once that chain of amino acids is put together,
Yeah?
it doesn't just stay as a straight line.
Oh, I bet it folds up into one of those cool 3D shapes.
Exactly.
I've seen pictures of those.
And that folding process is super important.
Okay.
The order of the amino acids decides how the protein folds, and that determines its function.
So a protein's shape is just as important as its building blocks.
Absolutely.
Wow.
The shape is what decides which other molecules a protein can interact with.
Oh, like a key fitting into a specific lock.
That's a great analogy.
But how does a long chain of amino acids know how to fold the right way?
Yeah.
It seems like it would be easy to get all tangled up.
It's a really intricate process.
Yeah.
It's controlled by all these different forces and interactions between the amino acids. Some amino acids are attracted to water.
Yeah.
Others are repelled by it.
Huh.
Some have positive charges, others have negative charges.
Wow.
And all these interactions help the protein twist and turn into its final shape.
So it's like this carefully choreographed dance happening inside our cells all the time.
That's a great way to put it.
It's incredible. But we're getting close to the end of our deep dive.
Okay.
What's the big takeaway from all of this?
Well, the big takeaway is that life on Earth, with all its amazing diversity, is built from this relatively small set of building blocks. It's like having a set of Legos, and you can use them to make anything.
Right.
From a tiny house to a huge skyscraper.
Oh.
The possibilities are basically endless.
That's a great analogy, and it all comes back to those functional groups.
Right.
They're like special tools that give those molecules their unique powers.
Exactly.
Without them,
Yeah.
those molecules would just be boring chains of atoms.
Right. They wouldn't do anything.
They bring the molecules to life.
They do.
And let them interact with each other.
Yeah.
To do all those things that make life possible.
It's pretty amazing.
It's like those functional groups are the spark plugs that get the engine of life going.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
We've covered how carbon bonds, the
Right.
crazy variety of organic molecules,
Yeah.
and how DNA tells the cell how to build proteins.
A lot to cut.
It really is. But it makes me think, if carbon is so important for life here on Earth, could it also be the basis for life on other planets?
That's a question that scientists have been wondering about for ages.
I bet.
It's definitely possible that alien life could be carbon-based.
Yeah, carbon is so versatile.
Exactly.
But what about those sci-fi stories where they have silicon-based life forms?
Oh, yeah.
Is that just fantasy? Or
Yeah.
could there be some real science behind it?
Silicon is right below carbon on the periodic table,
Okay.
and it also has 4 valence electrons, just like carbon.
Mm-hmm.
That means it can form 4 bonds, too.
So theoretically, it could create complex molecules like carbon does.
In theory, yes.
Okay.
But there are some
Yeah.
big differences between silicon and carbon
Okay.
that make silicon-based life less likely,
Hmm.
at least in environments like we have on Earth.
Oh, that's interesting. What kind of differences?
For example, silicon bonds are weaker than carbon bonds.
Okay.
And silicon dioxide. That's like the silicon version of carbon dioxide.
Right.
It's a solid at room temperature.
Oh, wow.
So it's not as available for those dynamic biological processes that we see with carbon.
So silicon can make bonds,
Yeah.
but it might not be able to create the same stable and complex structures as carbon.
That's the idea.
But that doesn't mean we should completely rule out silicon-based life.
Right.
The universe is huge,
It is.
and conditions on other planets could be totally different from Earth.
Exactly. Who knows what's out there?
That's true. What kind of crazy life forms might be waiting to be discovered?
I'd love to know.
It's an exciting thought to end our deep dive on.
It is.
This has been such a cool journey.
I agree.
We went from the basic bonding power of carbon
Yeah.
to the intricate world of DNA and proteins.
It's fascinating stuff.
We uncovered the very foundation of life itself.
We did.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The world of science is full of mysteries waiting to be solved. Keep those minds curious,
Absolutely.
and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.